So I want you to try and imagine a CEO of a highly profitable multinational corporation.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right, but now imagine that CEO is actually locked in solitary confinement.
Wait, like in a maximum security prison?
Exactly, in India specifically.
Yeah.
And this company's primary exports aren't, software or consumer goods.
Right.
They're cocaine, methamphetamine, and international assassination.
I mean, it sounds like the plot of a thriller, honestly.
It really does.
But the reality is that the architecture of global crime has completely bypassed the physical limitations of prison walls. Like, we're looking at syndicates that treat a life sentence not as a punishment, but basically just as a remote work arrangement.
It's wild. But anyway, welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today for you, the learner, is to really untangle this massive multi-agency international law enforcement crackdown. It's known as Operation Hardball.
Yeah, and we are pulling from a huge stack of sources today to do this.
We really are. We've got reports from Al Jazeera, The Times of India, CP24, CTV News.
Lots of local outlets too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Chake, the North Shore News, the Chilliwack Progress, and the Abbotsford News.
And honestly, we're going to need every single one of those perspectives because this isn't just your standard story about drugs crossing a border.
No, not at all.
We are mapping out how a transnational crime syndicate managed to move literal tons of narcotics, assassinate a prominent political figure, and this is the crazy part, spark a major geopolitical crisis between two allied nations.
All while the masterminds are, like we said, already serving time.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because we need to look at the sheer scale of Operation Hardball first.
Right.
We are talking about a coordinated sweep that involves the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP, the LAPD, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection.
The numbers coming out of these indictments are just massive. They carry a lot of weight.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking at 37 people charged in the United States, 24 arrests worldwide.
And 3 of those individuals were actually taken into custody in British Columbia, right?
Right. And the physical seizures alone disrupt major supply chains.
Yeah.
They grabbed roughly 1,000 kilograms of cocaine.
Wow.
Yeah, and a dozen firearms. But, the real goal here wasn't just seizing drugs. It was dismantling the leadership structures of 3 massive Indian-based transnational crime groups.
Okay, so the sources name the groups. They're run by Lawrence Bishnoi, Ravinder Dunda, and Jagu Bhagwan Puria.
Yes.
And the detail that stands out immediately to me is the current location of the founders of 2 of these syndicates.
Right, the prison thing.
Yeah. Lawrence Bishnoi and Jagu Bhagwan Puria are currently sitting in prisons in India. Bishnoi has actually been locked up for over a decade for totally unrelated crimes.
And that is really the defining feature of this entire threat landscape.
How so?
Well, they aren't street bosses. They operate as these highly insulated enterprises.
But mechanically, how does a person in a maximum security cell manage a supply chain spanning from Los Angeles all the way to British Columbia?
It's a logistical nightmare, you'd think.
Right. I understand delegating to lieutenants, but you still have to, communicate with those lieutenants.
Well, it really comes down to the complete exploitation of institutional vulnerabilities. A prison cell is only a barrier if you can't get a signal out.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. These syndicates utilize smuggled smartphones with encrypted messaging apps. They use corrupt guards who just look the other way.
Unbelievable.
And they even use lawyers who abuse attorney-client privilege to act as secure messengers. They're basically exploiting the legal loopholes designed for human rights to maintain constant, unbroken communication with their leaders on the outside.
So the physical isolation is basically irrelevant if the digital connection remains intact.
It's precisely the opposite of isolation, actually.
Really?
Yeah, the U.S. Department of Justice highlighted how Bishnoi uses this digital connection to project an image of himself online. He brands himself as a patriot, a nationalist, and a deeply religious individual.
Wait, from inside a maximum security prison?
Yep. He uses social media posts and even manages to get interviews with news organizations from behind bars to, cultivate this public persona.
So he's branding himself, but I'm kind of curious about the function of that brand because, a lot of organized crime relies on flying under the radar, right? You don't want a PR team.
Usually, yeah. But for them, visibility is currency.
Okay.
They use that brand to recruit members globally and to cultivate a climate of absolute fear across international diaspora communities.
Oh, honestly.
They hype their violence through online videos and internet posts, making themselves seem like omnipresent and untouchable.
Right, because if the leader is already in a maximum security prison, the underlying message is basically, law enforcement cannot stop us, we're already caught, and we're still running things.
Exactly. It's a huge flex.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, though. If you look at the real-world consequences of that fear, it's not just posturing online.
No, it's very real.
But the business model seems contradictory. Like, if you are moving 1,000 kilos of cocaine across international borders, you usually want zero attention from the authorities.
Sure.
Yet, these syndicates are actively seeking the spotlight through highly visible targeted terror in places like Surrey or West Vancouver. What is the actual business model here?
Well, what's fascinating here is that it's a highly calculated dual revenue stream.
Oh, okay, a dual stream.
Yeah. The violence isn't random or chaotic. It is a vital tool to extort wealth from the Indian diaspora community.
So they are literally monetizing terror.
Think about the mechanics of extortion. The U.S. indictments detail how they targeted a Surrey immigration consultant, demanding a $500,000 payout.
$500,000.
Yeah. And the voicemails they left him were incredibly direct. They said, it's your turn to file your taxes.
Wow.
And then they stated, get $500,000 ready. If you ignore me, then I'm happy to kill you.
See, to make a local business owner believe a threat like that, you need a very convincing resume of violence. You can't just be some guy on the phone.
Right. And they built that resume very publicly.
Give me an example.
So in November 2023, there was a drive-by shooting at the West Vancouver home of a prominent Indian actor and singer, Gippy Growal.
Oh, wow.
Bishnoi actually claimed responsibility for it. And his childhood friend and lieutenant, Goldie Brar, who basically runs the North American operations, allegedly called the singer and his manager demanding payment.
After shooting at the house.
Yes. Brar left a Facebook post in Punjabi warning the singer, no one can save you from us. And he left voice messages saying, you will not be able to ignore the bullets coming your way.
That is terrifying. So the drive-by shootings are essentially their marketing campaigns for the extortion side of the business.
That's exactly it. High-profile violence creates the baseline level of terror required for their extortion racket to function.
Right.
If a local immigration consultant knows this syndicate just shot up a famous singer's house, that consultant is much more likely to hand over the cash when the phone rings.
Yeah, you take the threat seriously. But they didn't just stop at celebrities and business owners, did they?
No, they didn't.
Because the most high-profile example, the one that really escalated this from a police matter to a massive geopolitical crisis, was the June 2023 assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
Yeah, that event fundamentally changed the scale of the conversation.
Yeah.
Nijjar was the president of the Guru Nanak Sikh Gurdwara in Surrey, BC.
Right.
And he was also a very vocal Khalistan separatist.
Okay. We should definitely pause here and provide some context for the listener because that term carries decades of historical weight.
It really does. So the Khalistan movement advocates for an independent Sikh nation to be carved out of India's Punjab region.
Okay.
It's a deeply contentious issue with a really complex, often violent history dating back to the 1980s.
Right.
The Indian government views the modern Khalistan movement as a severe, active national security threat. Meanwhile, many within the Sikh diaspora view it as a legitimate political movement for self-determination.
And Nijjar was a prominent voice for that movement here in Canada.
Yes, he was.
And he was shot to death in his truck right in the temple's parking lot. According to the unsealed U.S. federal indictment, it was Lawrence Bishnoi and Goldie Brar who allegedly ordered that assassination. The indictment even accuses Bishnoi of providing a photo of Nijjar to the hitmen.
And the fallout from that assassination, I mean, it didn't stay in the temple parking lot.
Definitely not.
It sparked a massive international diplomatic breakdown between Canada and India.
Right. In the fall of 2023, then Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stood up in the House of Commons, and he stated there were credible allegations linking agents of the Indian government to the killing.
Which is a staggering accusation for one allied democracy to level at another.
Exactly. And the reaction was immediate. Both nations expelled senior diplomatic staff. Ottawa declared that the Indian High Commissioner was a person of interest in the Canadian probe.
Yeah.
Canada even officially listed the Bishnoi gang as a terrorist entity.
It was basically an unprecedented diplomatic freeze.
Now, it's worth pausing here to note how muddy this gets, and we want to be super clear with you listening. Looking at these sources, our goal today is not to validate the Canadian government's claims or the Indian government's defense. We aren't taking sides.
Not at all.
Our focus is strictly on the friction between the political theater playing out on the world stage and the actual criminal indictments that just dropped as part of Operation Hardball. Because there is a very noticeable gap between the two.
The omission is really striking.
What do you mean?
Well, when U.S. authorities announced these massive indictments against Bishnoi and his associates for Nijar's murder, the documents contain no claims that Indian government agents masterminded the hit.
Wow. Okay. And it was stated explicitly by Canadian law enforcement, too.
Right.
Following the announcement, RCMP Deputy Commissioner Lisa Moreland gave an interview to the CBC. She stated point blank that in relation to this specific organized crime investigation, there is no evidence to suggest that Indian officials were involved in the crimes alleged in the indictment.
Now, she was careful to note that there is an ongoing separate Canadian investigation into 4 Indian nationals who were arrested in May 2024 for the murder.
Right, which she couldn't comment on.
Exactly. But regarding the international sweep of Operation Hardball, she confirmed nothing has emerged linking the Indian government.
So what does this all mean?
Well, the geopolitical narrative is shifting rapidly.
Yeah. The Times of India reports that Indian authorities feel vindicated by the RCMP's statement and the U.S. indictment.
Which makes sense from their perspective.
Right. India has maintained from the beginning that Nijar's death was just the result of a gang rivalry. They've heavily criticized Trudeau, basically accusing him of engaging in vote bank politics.
And for those unfamiliar with the term, vote bank politics in this context refers to the idea of a politician catering to a specific demographic just to secure votes.
Ah, okay.
So India's assertion is that Trudeau was pandering to the politically active Sikh diaspora in Canada by blaming India rather than acting on pure intelligence.
Got it. And with this new U.S. indictment focusing strictly on the cartel elements, we are seeing the diplomatic ice begin to thaw.
Yeah, money talks.
Seriously. Mark Carney, who succeeded Trudeau as prime minister, visited India earlier this year. Both countries are preparing for a likely visit by Indian Prime Minister Modi to Canada later this year to sign a trade agreement.
The resilience of international trade often outpaces diplomatic grudges.
It really does.
But, while the politicians fought over the who and the why of the assassinations, we really cannot forget the logistical machine that funds these syndicates on the ground.
Right, the actual money-making part.
Yeah. Extortion brings in cash, but moving narcotics at scale is what actually builds an empire.
Let's pivot to the mechanics of that supply chain then. Because to fund global terror campaigns, you need massive capital.
And the scale of the narcotics movement here is just staggering.
Okay.
Let's look at Jago Bhagwan Puria. The sources mentioned he was an associate of Bishnoi's before branching out to become a rival in India's Punjab state.
And he's also orchestrating his operations from an Indian prison.
Yes. According to the June 25th grand jury indictment, Bhagwan Puria and 16 other defendants were managing weekly shipments of cocaine and heroin.
Weekly.
Weekly.
The logistics outlined in the indictments show they were purchasing drugs in California, and then they were attempting to ship them north to Canada and across to the eastern United States.
Right.
And the Bishnoi gang was operating on a similar scale. Over a year and a half, they actually stole over 11,146 pounds of cocaine from rival gangs in the Los Angeles area just to move it themselves.
I mean, moving over 1,000 pounds of cocaine requires heavy, reliable logistics.
You can't just put that in the trunk of a car.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And that's where the U.S.-Canada border comes into play. The third major indictment in this sweep zeroes in on how they actually cross that line.
Right. It names 3 British Columbia men. Ravinder Singh Danda, who goes by the alias John Wick.
Classic.
Right. Jaskar Bagri, known as Baba, and Gurtesh Singh Sma, known as Simba.
These 3, along with others, were allegedly responsible for moving hundreds of kilograms of cocaine and methamphetamine across the border every single week.
Every week? That's insane.
Well, geography dictates strategy here. They were moving drugs from the greater Los Angeles area, hubs like West Covina and Fontana, and they were using long-haul semi-trucks.
Okay, that makes sense for the distance.
Yeah, but crossing the border requires blending into the local economic traffic.
And that's where the farm trucks come in.
Exactly.
The sources note they disguised the drugs in vehicles belonging to working border farms, which is brilliant, honestly, because if you've ever driven near the borders in British Columbia or Washington State, you know it is heavily agricultural.
Right.
A farm truck crossing back and forth is just part of the daily rhythm. It doesn't look suspicious at all.
But blending in visually isn't enough when you are moving hundreds of kilos. You need a guarantee.
What do you mean?
Well, the truly alarming detail in this indictment isn't the vehicles they used to cross the border. It's how they knew exactly when to cross.
Oh, right. Because according to the indictment, the Creston man, Sma alias Simber, allegedly received insider information from an individual working for the Canadian Border Services Agency, the CBSA.
Yeah. The human element is always the most vulnerable point in any security apparatus.
I want to break down what that actually means, practically speaking. Because it's one thing to hide drugs in a tractor,
Right.
but having an insider at the CBSA means you aren't just hoping the drug-sniffing dogs are looking the other way. This insider was allegedly feeding them the exact timing and location of border inspection.
It means knowing shift changes. It means knowing which specific lanes have canine units on duty at 2:0 a.m. versus 4:0 a.m.
Wow.
It means knowing the maintenance schedules of the X-ray scanners.
If a transnational cartel has a federal border agent feeding them operational schedules through encrypted communications, it entirely bypasses the physical border.
Completely.
Doesn't that completely change the threat matrix? We aren't talking about a violent street gang anymore. We're looking at a full-blown national security compromise.
Absolutely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, transnational crime at this scale relies entirely on exploiting local trusted institutions to function.
Yeah.
The syndicate's true strength isn't in their firearms or their supply of cocaine. It's in their ability to compromise the system itself.
Right.
Whether it's corrupting local authorities in India to persecute rivals or compromising a CBSA agent in Canada to guarantee safe passage for 1,000 pounds of narcotics.
Which brings the reality of Operation Hardball right to the doorstep of anyone listening to this deep dive.
Exactly.
Why should you care about an indictment handed down in Los Angeles against men sitting in an Indian prison? Because it proves that the concept of local crime is a complete myth in the modern era.
The boundaries have been completely erased.
They really have. A terrifying drive-by shooting in a quiet suburban Vancouver driveway, or a threatening voicemail left for an immigration consultant, or a farm truck casually crossing a local border checkpoint. None of these are isolated community-level incidents anymore.
No, they're not.
They are the visible, localized symptoms of an invisible global network. The local beat cop responding to a noise complaint about a gunshot is now dealing with the exact same threat matrix as international counterterrorism units.
The local and the global are just totally fused at this point.
Yeah.
And while it's, reassuring that Operation Hardball dismantled pieces of this network and seized significant contraband, it highlights a much more daunting reality about the future of global law enforcement.
Right, because the men at the top were already caught before this even started.
Exactly. They were already in prison. We've spent this whole time dissecting how men in solitary confinement utilize smuggled cell phones and corrupt guards to orchestrate assassinations and move metric tons of drugs.
Yeah.
But consider the trajectory of technology.
Oh, where does this go next?
That is the thought I really want to leave you with today. If these prison cartels are this effective today, using basic smartphones and WhatsApp, what happens in 5 years?
Oh, wow.
Imagine a syndicate leader in a maximum security cell gaining access to AI deepfake technology.
Oh, man.
They'd be able to clone the voice of a rival gang leader or even a government official to orchestrate hits or massive extortions.
Just from their cell.
Right. Imagine them utilizing fully decentralized, untraceable crypto networks to move billions of dollars seamlessly past any international sanction entirely from a smuggled device.
It's terrifying.
If physical walls and iron bars cannot stop human ingenuity and corruption today, what happens when tomorrow's technology arms the people we've already locked away?
If the border wall is an illusion, the prison wall might just be a minor inconvenience.
Exactly.
Something to really think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.